for sure. Well, welcome everyone. I mean, I'm just so happy to see everyone, truly. It's not what we're used to, but certainly, well, I guess we're getting used to this now, but certainly not for our holiday time. This seems a little strange. But thank you for being with us. We love that. So, just so you know, this evening's going to be recorded and it will be listed on our website. So if something is said and you didn't quite get it, you can go to the website and review. The breakout rooms won't be recorded, so it's a little more private there. I want to thank Bryn for helping us this evening and taking over the task of running the Zoom and keeping everything going smoothly. So would you put up the email addresses for me? The for those who were here last month, you know that we are beginning both a program of uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, my notes got knocked off. So anyway, for buddies, Alicia is the person who's kind of engineering that, and Julie is taking care of the small groups. If you said you were interested last month, they have your names. If you wrote to them and expressed an interest, they have your names. This is just a mention for anyone who might now say, oh gosh, I didn't speak up last month. I'm kind of interested. So if you are one of those, here are the people that you're to contact. And I think if you have made a decision, they're the people. Okay. Maybe you can take that down and my notes will come back up again. Oh, hang on. They're not. This is good to know. There we go. All right. We're going to be ending our evening lecture a little early so that we can celebrate this special season. We would normally, for those of you who have been with us over a holiday season, we would normally have some extra food and some, cider, and it would be a time for us to gather and really chat and have a good time. But given that that isn't possible, Julie will give us some special holiday thoughts. And then we're invited to share special ornaments or an object or decoration that reflects the way we celebrate the season. So we'll have all of that and a few other things will be happening at the end of the evening if you care to stay on. We just found out this afternoon, and I'll put this out to you. We have a teacher that we very, very much love and respect. Her name is Lorraine Marino. She lives in Philadelphia, but she has been our teacher, our helpership teacher for about 4 or 5 years. She will be teaching on Sunday, December 13th at 3:00 for the Greater Lakes Pathwork. She's going to be teaching about spiritual activism from the Pathwork perspective in how it relates to the state of our country and the world at this time. She's an excellent teacher. We will have that information if you're interested in it. As I said, it's December 13th, so you should kind of move on this if you're interested. They are asking for a donation, but I don't think you should let that stand in your way. So if you're interested, look at our website and we'll have that up in the next day or so. So now we've been reviewing the past month's lecture. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. This is Anatomy of Contraction in a nutshell, and I'm going to whiz through it. So fasten up. Okay. Expansion and contraction is a very normal part of growth and life. It is a three-part cycle: expansion, contraction, and stasis. Think of the way a bird flies: expanding up, very brief pause, contracting down, brief pause. It's what keeps them in the air. The way we breathe: we inhale and pause, we exhale and pause. But somehow we think that to expand is really what we must be doing all the time. The guide says we contract about our contractions. We believe we are not doing this spiritual walk the right way if we aren't 100% open and expanded all the time. When in fact, moving between these three different states is really as natural as breathing or as natural as birds flying. It's the movement of life. So first, positive expansion. I think we all pretty much understand the concept of expansion. Last month, we said that mutuality could not happen without being open, that is, energetically expanded, not fearful and closed. Positive expansion is kind of reaching, giving, making yourself available for a new experience. It opens up new ways of being. It implies courage and strength. It is an active force that propels itself outward. You're coming forward towards life in a very open, undefended way. An example of this would be coming here this evening with an open attitude, a willingness to learn to be changed in some way. Maybe it is having a conversation with someone who holds a different opinion, and you remain open to hearing what is said. So you may go into expansion with some degree of apprehension, but you hold yourself as open as possible and see what comes. So that's positive expansion. There's also negative expansion. This can be the hostile, conquering force that disregards others. It creates more separation. Negative expansion is one of the things that can cause disruption, pain, and war. When we have an emotional reaction, usually we've got that negative expansion where we want to strike out. We've got tons of examples of negative expansion in our world today. So we've got positive and negative expansion, and now we have negative contraction. So what is contraction? I think we all kind of know this in our bodies and our psyche. There is a tight holding back. It's like a cramp, a refusal to flow and give out. It can be as minor as sitting with a friend and holding back our thoughts. It is the seeking of safety through isolation and separation. It's motivated by fear, distrust, and lack of giving. Contraction is built on false ideas of what is safe and not safe. It is a refusal to move, to love, to trust, and give out. Last time we talked about mutuality bringing about separation and feeling alone. Our fear causes us to not have mutuality and to not have connection in our lives. It's based on contraction, on negative contraction. So positive contraction is kind of gathering all that you have learned and incorporating. It's internalizing, making this new learning part of you. So even though you're in contraction, it is for your growth and development. It may be a time of quiet and reflection. So we've got both positive positive and negative expansion and contraction. And so now we have the static principle. This is the third part to that natural cycle. If you think about breathing, there's always this pause after inhaling and exhaling. The static state allows us to rest. It allows the process to ripen. So just as the other two also have a negative status or a negative way of presenting itself, the static principle in its negative aspect means stagnation, putrefaction, really pretty disgusting, lifelessness, and inertia. So this threefold principle of contraction, expansion, stasis exists in every phase of creation. Looking at this cycle is just another way that we have of noticing where we are emotionally and behaviorally. We're just called to notice if we are in negative expansion, contraction, or stasis. Notice and be curious. Ask for help. Know there can be movement to a more positive state. So that was expansion, contraction, stasis in a nutshell. So I feel like, now I'm going to take a breath because I'm going to move on to my homily, and then we'll have a time of silence for a little while. This is kind of an unusual holiday message, but it is what came to me. And so standing for yourself and others, a spiritual journey to your true self. For most of you, you know that this is the theme for the year for our First Wednesdays. And if you've been coming here for any length of time, you know that the spiritual journey is a deeply internal one. There is this vast internal world that we each have, that we have access to if we choose to investigate it. We find ourselves living in a time of just great division. I would say as a nation, we straddle being in a negative contraction and a negative expansion. A lot of people are striking out. I've read and been told that gun and ammunition sales are kind of through the roof. People have and are taking sides. Truth has become relative to who is speaking rather than fact. So standing for yourself and others could just mean standing with those who have similar viewpoints. This evening, I'm going to be reading probably more than I ever usually do, but I'm going to be reading some direct quotes from these lectures. Even though the words were spoken many years ago, back in the 50s for many of them, I believe they speak really directly to us now. We really like to blame politicians or those who visibly and publicly shape our world and hold them responsible for all that is happening or not happening. But we're told, and this is a quote, every single person who with impure thoughts and emotions pollutes the cosmic reservoir, and this one day must have its effect. Each thought of hate, of separation, of egoism, of injustice, of discrimination, of wanting more for oneself than for one's neighbor. In short, each thought that breaks God's laws is a building block in that enormous spiritual structure, war, which must first be formed in spirit before it can manifest destruction on the material plane. That's the end of the quote. War would be the extreme example of negative expansion. It is us holding negative expansion within that has an effect out there. Take a moment and just reflect. What are your feelings about the pandemic, the great division we have in the country? I'm sure we could develop quite a list of feelings if we just went around the screen and gathered your thoughts about what's going on and what you're feeling about what is happening in our nation. And it's really, really easy to be angry, sad, overwhelmed, dismayed, feeling lied to, betrayed, to be filled with anxiety, hate, mistrust, and certainly the need for separation from the other, no matter who, doesn't matter who the other is. Could be one who wears a mask or one who doesn't wear a mask. It is eye-opening to hear what the guide tells us about our private lives. The thoughts we are thinking and maybe never uttering have an effect. So even if we don't have or speak divisive thoughts out in public, and here's a quote, but if we react in our private lives in erroneous negative ways, this energy will contribute to precipitate a war or another mass catastrophe. Only when you purify yourself from within, cleanse your emotions and thoughts, and so best fulfill your destiny wherever you are placed, only then can you also become a carrier of peace. Indirectly, by living spiritually, people can do more for or against war than politicians or statesmen. I'm just going to read that last sentence again. Indirectly, by living spiritually, people can do more for or against war than politicians or statesmen. That's the end of the quote. It's so easy to think when we put pathwork exercises and principles into our lives that maybe our final destination will be feeling better. Maybe we will have a happier, more fulfilled life. And that is really true. These are results many of us have experienced. However, if we take to heart what the guide said, it seems that something far greater can be impacted by the diligence we show to our internal work. This is a quote. No collective means can ever change the world unless it is sustained by inner growth and transformation, which is the product of self-awareness. As long as man does not face his own injustice, greed, selfishness, one-sidedness, pride, fears, all of these are on a deep, hidden psychological level. These same attitudes are bound to continue in the world, regardless of what social reforms are instituted. End quote. Now, I know some of you may be saying, dear God, don't I have enough to work on just dealing with my own life? This idea is just overwhelming to even think about. These lectures give us awareness that our negative thoughts have an impact in the world. And we're told over and over again in these lectures that it's better to have awareness than not to have awareness. So just know we're human. We have many faults. We think many things that go through our mind. We need to hold ourselves both with compassion and love and an understanding that the concepts and exercises that we have been given in Pathwork, when they're worked, not only positively affect the world in some way, or not only positively affect our personal lives, but they also affect the world. We're in a time of year where we give thanks and talk about peace and love. It's relatively easy to string lights, light candles, sing beautiful songs, and think of treasured family traditions. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we don't do these outward signs of peace and love. But let us not forget that peace in the world begins within each of us. Our devotion to our individual spiritual journey does impact the world. I want to encourage us to help each other remember that our individual work is truly important. Let us light the world from within. And may it be so. I'd like us to just take a moment of silence to experience some positive contraction, maybe, to absorb some of what has been said and give ourselves some space then to be able to receive all that Billy will have for us. So I'll keep track, and we'll be quiet for about a minute. It truly is a pleasure to introduce Billy Weil, who I think almost everyone does know, at least by sight. Billy is usually in charge of being our Zoom host. He's taught many of our first Wednesday lectures, and he and his lovely wife, Jo Brickley, are teaching our new Pathwork Foundations course with a lot of other people as well. He is a graduate of the helpership training, and he is also co-leading the new teachers supervision group. So he's a man of many talents. And I can tell you, I know Billy fairly well, that he is really looking forward to teaching the Great Transition this evening. Billy?
Thank you, Judy. That was really, really beautiful. I'm not too upset about me with your lecture, what you shared, just really great message. Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. By the way, we love it when you make hand signals because we can't make noise. Although you're always welcome to come off mute and if you have a question or just send the chat question through chat. I see we have at least a handful of new people. I know we promoted this on Facebook, and we're delighted to have new people. And if anybody would like to introduce themselves at any point, please do. Maybe now would be just a good time to take a stretch. Some people, particularly those that were in the Pathwork Principles, if you want to just stand up, and if you're not wearing any pants, don't be on camera. But if you just want to stretch it out, I don't know if that counts as positive contraction, but it's a positive expansion, but it certainly feels like it should. So, by the way, and I really like to do things as interactively as possible. So I got a lot of content here, but I could throw it all out and rather be responsive to your questions and have it work that way. This whole thing will be much more interesting and alive. So tonight we're going to look at all of Pathwork in a nutshell, sort of like the path of Pathwork, to show the path from isolation to union and how to accelerate your growth on that path. What Pathwork is all about. And everything in Pathwork starts with personal responsibility. So, whenever there's stuff happening outside you, you want to blame somebody like that, you can always look for some area of personal responsibility. And the use of your positive will. That's using your will to do spirit's work, if you will, to do your own personal work. It's analogous to going to the gym. If you can just muster the will to drive yourself there, that's half the battle. The other half is the effort you put in when you get there. So tonight's like that. By joining here tonight, you've gotten yourself to the gym. So yay, congratulations for getting yourself to the gym. And it's great. We have 54 different screens, and with some double ups, at least 55 people, which is wonderful. So little that he said tonight will have a big impact on your life if you don't do the work of kind of really integrating it in some way, applying it. Simple things like if we talk about the lower self, and I'll say what that is, lower self qualities, to really maybe take a fresh look at your lower self qualities and even consider sharing them as appropriate. And nobody has to share anything. Nobody has to do anything in Pathwork. That's one of our tenets. So that said, in a moment, I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to set an intention for yourself for your participation tonight. Whatever intention you want to set. My intention is to be present, alert, open, undefended, and stay as connected to spirit as I can, and to give you my best. So just take 15, 30 seconds, and if you want to jot down an intention for yourself, it'd be helpful to have a pencil, a piece of paper, and something to write with. Just any intention you want to set for how you want to be here. And Bryn, you could put up that first slide, please. Well, the next slide. All right. Oh, and so if you have a question, the 3 ways to do it. One is, what makes 4 ways, a number of ways. Make some movement, and Bryn will hopefully see you. If I don't, if we have the slides up, it's hard to. If we have a slide up, the best thing to do is to either put it in chat or to do the raise hand feature, which is where is that? Where is that, Bryn? The raise hand feature.
So
Remember. So
yeah, it's always hard to see it as the host. I think it's in the participants list. I think you can see it next to your name in the participants list, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, so we're talking about tonight the great transition in human development from isolation to union. If you're new to Pathwork, this is one of the 258 lectures that make up the basis of Pathwork. So what do we mean by isolation and union? Could you put up the next one, Bryn? Okay, so by the way, these next drawings were given to us by our own Mary Jane of our Pathwork, our dear friend, and in our Pathwork Foundations course. So she did the next 3 illustrations for us. And we're very grateful, and I love them. So this first one is the state of isolation, also known as duality. In this state, this is a state of separation. In this state, you suffer life alone. No matter how many dear ones may be around you, it's still, you have that feel of isolation. And we all have it from time to time, don't we? No matter, you think you are unique. Like my problems, nobody has the kind of problems I have. Nobody gets emotional the way I get emotional. Nobody knows the troubles I hold. And like you're the only one who experiences that particular pain or even that particular joy in quite that way. So it's a kind of a state of self-centered separateness. So I experience it myself, even though I have this amazing community of people that I've been going to training with like every month for like 5 years. Every time I walk into the room with those people, I feel like, I wonder if I'm included. I have to like readjust my thinking. My automatic monkey mind is like, am I a full member of this group, or am I sort of an outsider? Anyone see themselves in that state? You can just raise your hand if you want to, or okay, great. Okay. And so the lecture says you must be fully aware that you still live in this old undesirable state. So if you didn't put your hand up, that you are aware that you still live in this undesirable state, I'll assume you either have a rotator cuff issue or that you just haven't realized that you live in this undesirable state, because the lecture says you do, and it's usually right. Although not always, and you're always free to challenge it. Take what you like from the lecture, and you don't have to believe or subscribe to any of it. Could I have the next one, Bren? So the other end of the spectrum is union. So in union, you feel connected with everyone, even the village idiot. You feel, experience, and think in an entirely different way. You feel at one with the universe. You marinate in spirit. I'm not a Christian, but I think this is what Paul is, I wasn't raised as one at any rate. I think this is what Paul is talking about when he talks about the peace that transcends all understanding. Undesirable things still happen, but the power and presence of spirit so pervades you that you can face things with a calmness and a trust and a relaxation. I've had some moments of this. I remember once in Ann Arbor for like 2 hours, I was just walking around in an altered state without any drugs, and just I felt connected to everybody I saw. Everything looked beautiful, even the garbage looked beautiful. I have this experience a lot when I'm doing a helper session and I really feel joined with my worker. And more recently, over the past, I don't know, about 6 months, So I studied literature, and I, was a good student in school, and I was an A student in poetry. But for me to write a poem was a lot of work and took like a week. And now I've had this amazing phenomenon that when I sit in my meditation chair, and often I'm very upset about something, like I sit down and I'm unnerved by something. Something happened. Client is upset with me. Friend is upset. Whatever it is, and I have a lot of pain about it. And I sit and I start to meditate and invite in spirit. And then something happens. Like it's not like I hear voices, but something says to me, you should write this poem. And I'm like, well, I don't really have the poem thought out. I have the tiniest idea for it. And it's like, it keeps nagging at me. So I keep my Chromebook right next to me and I open it up. And I've been generating these poems in like 10 or 20 minutes that need or feel like they need no editing. They're the best poems I've ever written. And I'm cranking out. I mean, I don't have any intention to write any poems. They just come. And I have that experience of unity where all of a sudden this pain is transformed into something creative and beautiful. Has anyone, can we take this slide down? Has anyone ever found themselves in this kind of state of unity and would be willing to share about it? And take a moment to think about it. It doesn't have to be, that you were walking 6 feet off the ground. It could simply be, you're just having coffee with a friend and you just felt like everything was right. Margaret, did you have your hand up? Go ahead, can you unmute yourself? Thank you. Oh, and Mary Jane has her hand up. So Mary Jane will be next.
Then
And then I've asked Jonah actually to share something, so he'll be the last one. Go ahead, Margaret.
So it's not that I experienced that euphoria, but I like to paint, and I can take it like a vase, for example, or a wooden box, and I can look at it for a long time. I can't create something, but if I'm quiet and I call on something higher, there's a flow that I can't explain, but I related to what you were saying about the poetry, where it comes out of me. It isn't like something I decide.
Yeah.
And it comes when it wants to.
Yeah.
It isn't something that I make up my mind to do. So it's a curious process, which makes me think there's a bigger hand in it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Mary Jane?
So I'm oftentimes reminded of this brief experience I had. I was traveling to Sweden with my son and daughter, and there was, it was the summer, so it was light throughout the evening. I mean, it was still midnight and there was still daylight. And there was just a peacefulness that was astounding of being in that type of environment, being with the two people on earth that I cherish the most. And it was definitely there was not a moment of that experience that I felt anything other than unity with the people I was with the world, with the outdoors, with the indoors, and it just seemed like everything was together. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I asked Jonah to share. Full disclosure, I can't see where you are, Jonah, but oh, there you are. Full disclosure, Jonah is my stepson. That's not why I asked him to share. Jonah has shared with me these, and Joanne and others, just these uncommon experiences like I've never had. And so I've asked him to share. So about that. So go ahead, John.
Thanks, Bill. And yeah, so I've had a lot of experiences in the past, and I sort of was struggling to come up with how to translate it. So I wrote a little bit today, and I was able to come up with something. But I've been in a place lately that seems so far from unity. So when I was asked to share my experience of it, I was overcome by feelings of self-doubt, fear, nervousness. I had this recycled thought that I have nothing to offer. And that took me further and further away from like feeling a unified state. And that was the very place that I felt like I had to be if I had any type of right to speak on anything about unity. So in this struggle, I just had this call from my higher self, just this feeling like, just go there, just explore it. You can't lose, you know. So after this, I had this peaceful recognition, and I was just cutting into an apple. And I brought myself to what it was that I was going to receive. And as my brain processed what an apple is, like the shape in my hand, the crispy crunch of it, the sweetness on my breath, my spirit too had this recognition. And I found my own self in the very fruit. And it's the nourishment of giving from the sky to the soil to the root to the branch, the sweetness of the fruit. It carries with it love and the tender care of its handling. And I sense all this, and I feel all this, and I taste all of this because I look to it, and I called out to experience it. And from the picking of the fruit, the sorting, the boxing, the transport, somehow this precious vessel of life found its way to me. And I'm just another vessel. I'm just another vessel of life. And we cross paths, you know, with this apple. And so just as it found me, then I find my way here to you tonight. And I carry with me that power that I got from the apple, from the sun, from the wind, from the love and the care and the tenderness in delivering this to me. And all that I just found in just like a sip, just a bite of fruit, just the experience of that unity and that wholeness. And it was really powerful. It was really moving.
Beautiful. So before you go on mute, that was spectacular, Joan. I teared up personally. I don't know what the everyone's other reactions were. But just so people don't get a holier than thou experience, you know, can you give some perspective? Like, do you find yourself in that state very often? Like frequently, like regularly, like you wake up in that state?
No, and it's always a struggle. And even when you asked me to share, I don't know if you remember what I said when you asked me to share, I was like, yeah, I'll share on some unity bullshit. You know, that's the state I was in, you know, but most of the time I'm in duality.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So the lecture says, in union, you'll feel a deep purpose, a new joy, and security will penetrate you. Well, didn't we just hear about that? You will still have suffering, but you will know it cannot harm you. That which you need to go through will not frighten you anymore. It will make sense to you, and you'll go through it courageously and growing with and from it. So you're accepting challenges in life instead of shrinking away from them. The only way to master your fear is the willingness to go through it. And it means acceptance of life, including one's imperfections. Bryn, can I have the next slide? So the state between how do we get from isolation to union? Do we just leap over there? Well, sometimes we do. That's called spiritual bypassing. It's not sustainable. It's a kind of a house of cards. But in a state of acceptance, we accept life on life's terms. We recognize that there's good and there's evil, and we don't freak out about the evil part. You don't beat yourself up every time you make a mistake. You bring a higher level of consciousness to bear. So the guy says, when you can accept your limitations as a human being, you have unlimited power. That's really interesting, isn't it? If you can accept your limitations, you have unlimited power. You have to accept your own imperfections as well as life's imperfections. Okay, come to the next slide, Rin. So in this state of isolation, we're lost in duality. Duality is this either or, right, wrong thinking. If I'm right, you must be wrong. It's good, something is either good or it's bad. We project and blame others. If something's not going right with me, I look to you for why. It's not personal responsibility. It's your responsibility that I'm upset. I'm defended. I'm putting my defenses up. I'm not letting you see the real me. I'm not being vulnerable. I'm being argumentative. I'm being right and making you wrong. And later, this actually isn't in the lectures, but this idea of 100-100, meaning that a thing is either 100% right or it's 100% wrong. There's no gray area. Okay, and the next one, Bryn. So in unity, transcends duality, everything is one, everything is interconnected. We speak of the divine self, the God self, whatever words work for you, your intuition. And this is the state of 100. And then there's the middle state, Bryn, if you would, of acceptance. So this is how we get from isolation to unity, is through acceptance, where we accept that there's duality. We don't rail against it. There's, Democrats and Republicans. We're one, somebody's the other, but we don't knock the other one down. We own our own negativities, our own limitations, our own limited viewpoints. We're undefended. Our vulnerability, when we share our vulnerability, it opens space for others, just as Mary Jane's and Margaret's and Jonah's share. I don't know about you, but they definitely open space for me. And we call this a state of 50-50. We accept life 50-50. Half of it's bad, half of it's good. We accept that. Take the recent election. Anybody remember that? That's a joke. How many times I found myself in duality during this election, thinking that everybody voting differently from me was fundamentally flawed, while I had the lock on the truth. That's duality. I'm right, they're wrong. There were a number of times where I did some work to get to acceptance, to accept that I didn't know it all, to consider alternate points of view. And most of all, that to know that whatever would happen with the election, whichever way it went, that I really would be fine. And I also had an experience of unity. I have a neighbor who is the absolute opposite of me in all values in terms of these kinds of things. And we had a moment where he shared with me some really personal details about how a number of years ago he came home one day to find the wife he loved, who he thought loved him, and they had a good relationship, had left him with their children and cleared the house of furniture, left nothing but his clothes, a mattress, and a pillow. Blew him away. And he shared it so vulnerably with me. And in that moment, there was this feeling of this union, this palpable feeling of connection. Okay. So any questions about these three states for now? And you can take this down so we can see if anybody's, raising their hand there. By the way, you have the ability to switch between gallery view and speaker view. If you don't know how, we can tell you. Kathy.
I had it tonight watching the Steeler game. I was one with everybody.
Really? Seriously?
With me. It was a beautiful feeling.
Great. I mean, you can get it anywhere. Any other one? Anybody else have any questions? Or anything? Yeah, Peggy.
Today I called a good friend who's staying with her significant other, and they both are just delightful in different ways. And for some reason today with her, I felt even closer than usual. Other times it's sort of a either or, this or that. Yet we're both longtime good friends. But today it just felt, you know, he brought her a toasted peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I was nibbling on popcorn. We just ate in front of each other, and I said, "This feels like we're sisters." She says, "Yeah, we're having a lot of camaraderie today." You know, something very basic, but it sure made my day, and it's been a
Mm,
wonderful day for a long time.
mm, beautiful. So it carried over. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you. All right, Bryn, can I have that next slide, please? So now I want to talk about the personal states of consciousness that and how we move through them. So you can imagine that these are analogous to the three states we just showed. The first is unconscious child consciousness. So we use the word child because this is a consciousness that was formed in childhood, usually 0 to 3 or 4 years old. Where we're not that bright. Well, I guess we are in some ways, but we're not wise. And so we start to form opinions about how the world is, and they're wrong, many of them. And we come up with defensive strategies that are counterproductive. They're in duality. They're not great. They're great for when you're a kid. Like if you don't scream your head off when you're a kid, you might not get fed. But once you get older, screaming your head off to get your point made isn't as effective. So that's the unconscious child consciousness. And we have child in quotes because you can be 90 years old and still have this consciousness. Likewise with adults in quote, because you can be an adult and old like all of us are and still have child consciousness, but it's a shorthand that we use. And so I thought I'd better include it here. So when you hear that shorthand used, you know that when someone says adult, a pathwork helper or teacher, they're talking about the healthy conscious ego. So the healthy conscious ego is that part that is non-judgmental and loving and as honest and true as it can be. That's why I have Mr. Rogers there. He's my hero, by the way. So more on the healthy conscious ego later, perhaps. And then there's the higher self, also divine consciousness, also known as the God self. This is you could think of it as your greatest intuition, right? Times where you've actually like kind of closed your eyes and you've had something come to you. That could be your higher self. And this is what we're doing in Pathwork is growing that healthy conscious ego and tapping more and more into our own higher self. And that higher self also has a connection to spirit. Okay, can I have the next one? Right, so under child conscious, okay, so lower self is actually synonymous with child consciousness. So they're synonyms. However, when most people speak of the lower self, they're speaking of lower self qualities like, oh, I don't know, some of mine are selfishness, irritability, impatience, arrogance, insecurity. Actually, let's just take this down for a second, Bryn. Just some people, take yourself off mute or put in chat one or more of your lower self qualities. This will be useful to everybody if you do it, if this goes the way I think it will.
Rageful.
Thank you, dear.
Angry.
Angry. I got in chat, we have arrogance, stubbornness, intolerance, aloofness, judgmental, self-righteous, irritable, self-righteous,
Fear.
fearful, self-pity, Sorry?
Aggressive.
Aggressive, self-pity, impatience, reactive instead of responsive, superior, prideful, undisciplined. Now, let me ask you this. Is there anybody angry? Is there anybody who would say, there's a handful of these that I don't have any of them? Raise your hand if it's like, there are at least 3 or 4 and you don't have that. Okay, not anybody. Manipulative, another one. Who doesn't have a little bit of manipulative? Nobody. So why am I doing this? Because, oh, there was another one, I missed it.
To make yourself feel
No.
better about yourself.
No, but I do feel better about myself because I'll tell you why. Smartass, is smartass up there? I feel better about myself because what I realize is that we're all the same. We are all the same. And so notice that how by exposing our lower self, for a moment, we create a sense of unity. Can you feel it? Thank you for doing that. Can you put the slide back up, Bryn? Okay, next one. So these are aspects of child consciousness. You might think of them as voices. Voices. So the mask is the image I try to show the world on top of my lower self qualities. So I might pretend to be patient to cover up that I'm seething with impatience. Let's just keep going through these because we're good for time. So next one, Bren, the idealized self-image, often abbreviated to ISI, is kind of the mask that I believe that I'm actually enrolled in myself. For example, I remember in the early training, I shared that I was the kind of person who would do anything for anybody. And leader Renee Watley said, "Oh, really? Let's see." Like, and she went around the room and somebody said, I think Alexandra said, "I'd like my house painted." And somebody else said, "I'd like a new car." And I'm like, well, I guess I wouldn't do anything for anybody, but I kind of believe that I would. The truth is, I'll do anything for anybody if I want to, and it's not that much of a pain in the ass. So that's part of my ISI, and we all have them, and they are damaging. Next one, Bryn, is the ruler. That's the part of us that wants things exactly the way it wants it and how it wants it. And if it doesn't get it the way it wants, this is why you could go fight to the death over an argument about semantics, something that's not even important. And the next one is the tyrant. The last one is, and there's many of these, I'm just giving a smattering. The tyrant's that part of us that feels like it's acting in our best interest by berating us. For example, if I make a mistake with my client, rather than say, well, that's human, people make mistakes, I will the tyrant in me will beat myself up. And the next one. So this is the full picture. This is the punchline. This is the whole lecture in a nutshell and this is the path, the great transition, is moving from the left to the right. I'll just give you a minute with a slide. And while we're looking at it, if you have any questions, maybe put it in chat or raise your hand, because otherwise we won't see you. All right. Can you take down, Bryn? So let's talk about, so how do we get there? Mayron's asking the distinction between the ISI and the mask. So the mask is what I show you, what I show the world, because I don't want you to see that I'm insecure. So my mask is one of I know it all. You know, right? Because I don't want you to see my insecurity. The ISI is like a mask between me and me. I don't want to accept my own imperfections. So my ISI is that I don't make mistakes. I could say a lot more about that, but I really wanted to mostly just point to it as opposed to kind of go deep on that, because there's a couple other things I really want to get to. So there are a bunch of spiritual practices. Oh, someone says, do we ever get to be the divine self 100% of the time? There are a few people walking this planet like Eckhart Tolle, maybe the Dalai Lama, maybe a handful of people. It's not looking good for you and me. But don't count it out. I mean, I could see Jonah getting there. I mean, he got a lot of work to do, but I could see it happening because he's got such an amazing connection to his higher self when he's not being a pain in the ass. Okay, so there are a number of spiritual practices. Bryn, if he comes off mute, just mute him again. No, I'm kidding. There are a number of spiritual practices that we do. So like Pathwork is, it gives you a lot of insight and like that, the lectures and everything, but you still have to do the work. It's still it's more like a recipe book than a cake, right? You got to still do the baking. And one of the recipes that you can do baking with is a daily review. And I know that was talked about. Let's see, and that's a really fundamental practice. Now, I know there's a lot of experienced path workers here. My question for you, and we're going to put up a poll in a second, and I'm going to talk about what the daily review is for those of you that don't know very briefly, because I know that Peg just went through it. Probably I'll say something different than what she says. And I'm just going to do it very briefly. How many people actually, here's the daily review poll. Go ahead, put it up, Brent. You have it? Oh, there it is. So this is anonymous. We won't know. There's first question is, I'm going to read it for Peggy. How often do you do a daily review? Typically one or it's mistype. I type in mistypes. That's my typo. Typically one or more times a week. That should, sorry. That's first one is supposed to say 4 or more times a week, but the F is missing, but it's okay if you voted for it and it's not accurate. Roughly once a week, every now and then, never yet. I wasn't paying attention. A daily what? All right, we'll wait till we get we already got 75%. Okay, so maybe a third of the people that responded, a little bit more than a third, do it pretty regularly. That's really good. Roughly once a week, another 15. So almost 50% of the people who responded do it either 1 or 4 more times a week or roughly once a week. Every now and then, this gets 40%. Oh, here, I'll just show you. And am I sharing the results? Can you see them? Okay. And then never yet, only 4 people. And then, okay. So there you have it. Okay. So what a daily review is simply taking time. It could be a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it could be longer. Once a day, anytime you want. It could be the same time every day or a different time, probably better if it's the same time. And it's just looking at disharmonies, any disharmony that popped up. Bryn, could I have that first slide? I'll give you an example of what it might look like. And you might have 5, you might have 10, you're not going to have 20, and you're not going to have 1. So here's a very sort of brief idea. Here's disharmonies I might have had. I got really angry about getting a robocall. Sometimes I get robocalls and I go whatever. Sometimes I get robocalls and I scream bloody murder. My wife rolled her eyes. Sometimes my wife can roll her eyes. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes it's just really gets my goat. And a friend called and talked for an hour all about her. And that just, that pissed me off. So could you do the next one, Brent? So then after you list these, you could list what was the feeling or what was triggered in me. and you might be looking for patterns. So for example, my time not being valued or respected is a pattern I see in many of, like 7 or 8 out of 10 of my daily disharmonies are going to be about that. So that tells me that's a place for me to work. That's like a big sign that says gold here, gold below, dig here. So that's an example of a daily review. Okay, take that down, please, Bryn. And yeah, that's all I need to say about that. But the point is, you have to drive up what your issues are, so you know what to work on. You know what's running your life. If you go insane when you get a robocall, you're allowing a robocall to run your life. And if you're okay with that, great. I had bigger plans for you. Okay, another one that's fundamental. I'm just going to do this really briefly. I probably shouldn't do it at all. I think Judy advised me not to, but I'm going to just do it really briefly, just to point to it, not to explain it. So could you put up the next slide, Bryn? So this is the 3-chair process, not this one. Yeah, the 3-chair process. We have these 3 voices, that unconscious child consciousness, the healthy conscious ego, and the higher self. And click again, Bryn. And so there's a conversation between I'll shortcut with adult and child. How come we can't be divine 100% of the time? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That was
No, it's okay.
Later.
My problem is that I can't not look at these things. It's part of my ADD. So
my bad, sorry.
I'm going to address it. No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, Trevor.
All right, thank you.
So she says, this stayed with me. How come we can't be into the divine 100% of the time? I'm not saying we can't, and I don't really know that we can't. I have no, Joanne, did you want to comment? But I have no lock on that. It's just, there's like Eckhart Tolle seems to be divine all the time. I just don't know that many examples of people you point to, but I'm not saying you can't. Darling, was there something you wanted to say there? So you come off mute.
We're human beings because we're a part of the evolutionary process, which the ultimate goal is to be united with a higher consciousness, but we're here to accept some pain to transform it. That's our process. That's our reason for being on this planet of duality. So if we process and transform our individual negativities, we can be eventually over time. And then we won't be on this dualistic planet anymore.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Okay, so now this arrow should really go both ways. So these guys have a conversation, and the adult is really inviting full expression, validating the child. Look, that strategy, that defense, that whatever you had, that makes perfect sense that you would have that as a child. However, the re-education piece, it doesn't make sense anymore. And then click again, Bryn. Thank you. And then the adult also goes for guidance. Like it says, well, for my higher self, like I might close my eyes and drop in and say, well, what's my next best step? I'll give you an example. I build websites for a living, and I'm a very sensitive person. If a client says they're upset with me, I will have a huge reaction most of the time. And so I might want to do one of these processes right on the spot. It doesn't have to be a big half-hour thing. I can do this in a minute and a half. My healthy conscious ego will ask my child, what's up? And the child will just let it rip, including the irrational, because you want to let the irrational out so you can see that it's irrational. How dare my client get so upset with me? It wasn't my fault. I'm human. He's going to fire me. He's going to tell other people. He's going to fire me. He's going to tell everybody that I'm a horrible web developer and they're all going to stop using me. And then I'm not going to have any money. So my wife and all my friends are going to desert me and I will be penniless and desert. Like that's sort of like what goes on in my brain. And I'm not kidding. I am not even exaggerating. That's what happens in my unconscious child consciousness. And so the adult kind of, I have that conversation where he says, oh, that makes perfect sense. But, when you were a child, that made sense because you needed those defenses. They're not helpful now. Here's another way to do it. And then at any point, I could ask the higher self for guidance. And the higher self might say something like, this client is your teacher. He's the whetstone you can hone your edge on. Embrace him for the gift he brings. So that's the 3-chair process in a nutshell. We're going to be spending an entire day on this with the Pathwork Foundations group. So, 1.5 minutes does not give it justice. Okay, can you take that down, Brent? Okay. Ooh. So that's really sort of, in a nutshell, what we're doing in Pathwork. A path starts with recognizing our most obvious faults, and it requires uncommon self-honesty. And most of the people on this group, the reason you're here is because you're willing to have uncommon self-honesty. And none of us take that lightly. That's a beautiful, undefended characteristic. And it's a gift you give to the world when you do that. The next stage, okay, yeah, could you put up the next slide, Brent? So the next phase deals with finding what they call images. An image is just this idea you have of like a truism that's not really true. So yeah, it's this one. So 2 clicks. So we started with seeing our most obvious faults. I just talked about that. And then, one more click. Recognizing that our shortcomings stem from, so self-will, pride, and fear are the sort of 3 basic shortcomings that you can pretty much boil everything down to that. I mean, right now, that's just an interesting intellectual fact, but it is an interesting intellectual fact. But when you work with it, it's actually very useful. So then we find our wrongful conclusions. It doesn't matter if they're called images or misconceptions, what they're called, but they're wrongful conclusions. For example, if I show vulnerability, then what's a wrongful conclusion? Somebody just come off mute and answer that question. If I show vulnerability, then
I will appear to be weak.
I will appear to be weak. Everyone will think I'm weak, so don't do it.
Okay.
All authorities. What's a wrongful conclusion about all? What did you want to say something, Alicia?
I'll get hurt if I show my vulnerability. Then
I'll get her. I'll get her. Right. And what's true? What's true is that vulnerability is the greatest strength we have.
Right.
All authorities. What? What's a misconception or a wrongful conclusion about all authorities? Anybody?
They're useless.
They're mean.
Yeah.
They're self-serving.
They're self-serving. All authorities are self-serving. And, it's really a problem because it's like, it's like when I went to lead the new teacher supervision with Kim, it's like I knew I was immediately coming with authority and I was going to be subjected to everybody else's wrongful conclusions about authority, including my own, so it's not useful. All men or women are, life, love, God is, are, like that. What's a misconception you have that is all authorities are untrustworthy, right? All women are untrustworthy, all men are pigs, God is vengeful, God lets you down, life lets you down. What's some other misconceptions you might have? Take a minute to just actually actually take a minute to do a fresh one. Take the slide down for a second, Bryn. And just, maybe in your journal, just write down like, what's a misconception that you maybe spend too much time with believing? If you have a question, feel free while we're doing this. And okay, anybody have something you came up with that you'd be willing to share? Remember what a gift it is to share your vulnerability. Pam?
All Republicans are evil.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else? Julie?
If I trust, I'll get burned.
If I trust, I'll get burned. And so notice what we do with these things, like, therefore I won't trust, therefore what's my life gonna look like?
Erin has her hand up.
Burns, thank you, teacher.
Mine is life should be fair.
Life should be fair. And so when it's not fair, then you have every right to be pissed off.
Right.
And in duality.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you. Great one. One more. Going. Debbie.
I should always help others and be a caretaker. Always.
I should always. Yeah. That could get burdensome. Yeah. And how do you feel about yourself when you're not doing it? Because you can't do it for everybody all the time, right? So, right, how would one feel about themselves? Like, oh, crap, I'm being a crappy person because I'm not doing it. Peggy.
I wrote, I'm undisciplined. I won't carry through with creative impulses. I'm burying talents and will be called to task.
Okay, so what is the misconception? That I'll be called to task. That
I'll be called to task because I never carry through with creative ideas.
Okay, I never carry through with creative ideas. Is it true that you never carry through with creative ideas?
It's not never, that's for sure.
It's not never. So that's that tyrant we were talking about before. Remember? That's the tyrant saying, I never carry through. I'm a bad person. I should be caretaking everybody and I don't do it, so I'm a bad person. Thank you, Peggy. Okay. Oh, I guess we need that slide. Well, you already know the slide, Brent. So in terms of the step to acceptance, we need to understand the origin of these things, where they came from, which, if we had a workshop on this, it'd be really good to look at. And it'd be great for you in your meditation to look at what are my misconceptions and where did they come from? And when and what's the damage they're doing to me and what's the damage they're doing to others? And the guide says, when you do this, you don't do it with like a sense of reproachment, you do it with a sense of victory. I love that, a sense of victory. Wow, I found another image. People have shared that with me. Oh, I'm so great, I found this image. All right. Good. All right. So all feelings are divine. What? How would anger be divine? How would sadness be divine? Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Anger, you need anger for justice and for standing for oneself and others. Sometimes you need anger, right? It's a divine quality, properly channeled. Sadness for experiencing the fullness of life. Who wants to see a movie that's all happy? Fear for self-preservation. But these get distorted early in life. For example, fear comes in handy when, there's a real imminent danger where you're worried that you're not going to get fed. But too many of us have that, or there's a tiger, but too many of us have that same life or death fear about the possibility of losing a job, about public speaking, about the election. People have life or death. I can't tell you the number of people who say, well, if this person wins, I'm leaving the country. And think about how extreme that is. But even relatively minor things, people say that public speaking is like, it's like more fearful than death for people, literally. So the main point is that we all have these same inconvenient emotions and feelings. It's not like Peggy has this unique emotion called Blotzfreud that nobody else has, just her. Or that Alicia experiences sadness in a way that nobody else experiences sadness that way. They're all the same, they're all the same divine and twisted emotions, just in different degrees. And when you really embrace this, you automatically, the lecture says, if you really embrace this, you automatically become part of the whole, from isolation to unity. And that's the difference you make when you share your vulnerability, as people have shown. You make us part of the whole. When you're in a state of union, you know that you share in any of the existing emotions because of self-produced conditions. So you know that that personal responsibility, you produced it. Okay. The guide says, I love this, your dignity will increase to the extent that your pride of separateness decreases. I always thought like the end all be all would be that I would be the Time Man of the Year, right? Then I would be the best, be on the cover, everybody could see, there he is, Man of the Year. But the guide says your dignity will increase to the extent that your pride of separateness decreases. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? Okay, so now I'm going to play a video.
Bill?
Yeah.
Can you say that again? Your pride of separateness?
Your dignity will increase to the extent that you decrease your pride of separateness. So I'm proud. I'm a unique individual. Nobody else is like me. I'm the best at this. I'm the most creative at that. I'm the whatever, smartest. I'm the smartest guy in the room. That lowers my dignity. When I say I'm like you, that raises my dignity.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you. This is the best thing you're going to see tonight from me. It's a 4-minute video of happens to be a comedian, Anthony Griffith, who is praying for us tonight, by the way. He's being interviewed by some fellow comedians as part of B-roll for a movie they were making. And he's a really spiritual person. He's a devout Christian. So when he talks about God, he's not a path worker. So his version of God is his version of God. But they were asking how he made peace with his understanding of God and life after his 3-year-old daughter died. And he was madly in love with his 3-year-old daughter, and she died. I think from some crappy childhood disease. And then later he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So this is my attempt to show you what acceptance and unity might look like and see what you think. Okay, I'm going to play this one. So I have to give myself, I'm spoiled by you doing all the work, Brent. I forgot what I'm doing here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share this. Oh, here we go.
Did your daughter, anything that happened with your daughter affect how you told jokes or what you felt your job was as a comedian? Or, and how did you get out of that spiritually, that place?
Well, when my daughter died, I was not angry. I was confused. I wanted to know. I wanted to ask God, because I was the perfect father. So when she passed, and I was just confused. I wanted to know. And so like with most people, my first response was, when I get to heaven, that's going to be the first question. Why? And you go through the stages of loss. You have anger, depression, and you can work on depression. You can be depressed for, I think, a good 10 years. I was, and still function, still make people laugh, still go through life. But it wasn't until maybe 10 years later that I started hearing the birds chirp again, smelling the roses. So in that process of searching, God began to reveal to me, why not your daughter? Why not your, because like a lawyer, you never ask a question if you don't know the answer. And I had to go, well, what would I say? What if he said it's because of something you did in your past? Didn't want to hear that. What if God said she was supposed to die at 3? I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to hear that because I couldn't enjoy the 3 years of life with her. So in God's wisdom, the peace that I have is that he said that she's in a better place. She's with her. She's in a better place. She's with her her grandparents, and I will see her again. And I understood that. So I just make people laugh. That's my ministry. If the Holy Spirit tells me in conversation, or if I meet people individually, and they say that, hey, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. I was diagnosed with MS 14 years ago. The death of my daughter, the death of my parents, equipped me for MS. I go, okay, because I look at life as if it's a great novel that you're reading. And it's so great that it's a page turner. And the star of that book is you. And you turn the next page and the main character loses his daughter. But it's so compelling. You keep going.
You ever just want to close the book for a while?
No, because it's so thrilling, because this book is making you cry, laugh, get mad, get angry, that you keep going. You keep going because I want to see what's the end. Now, the author of the book is God. And this is the thing, you already know there's a sequel. And that's the peace I have. And so every day I go, I wonder what God has in store for me.
just stay within yourself for a minute. Just kind of let it marinate a little bit. What if you envisioned all your trials and tribulations as this compelling novel that you couldn't wait to see what happens next? And you thought, oh, that sad part, that was really sad. That was really rich. That devastating part was mind-blowing. None of it was wrong. It was all okay. It was all part of the story. It's your story. It's mankind's story, humankind's story. It's spectacular. I mean, just think of what are the odds that we would be hurling around in this globe, apparently the only life in the anywhere. We're all on it at this time. We're getting a shot. We get a story. So that's my best. So I'm still choked up about the about the video. That is my my best way of thinking about unity. And I don't have a lock on this, so you may have a better way. And it's different for everybody, and it's the same for everybody. The guy says the change comes slowly. It's an inner change, not an outer change. What is essentially you will remain the same, only enriched. Only what was not essentially you will gradually fall off like an old, outworn cloak. So it's not a doing, it's an undoing. It's not just about dissolving childhood conflicts as an end to themselves. It's about a means towards a greater aim. The greater aim from transition from the self-centered state of isolation to the state of union with all. Nothing else can give you the real security you're still searching for. Not your PhD, not picking on you, Dreber. I would have said that anyways. Not your PhD, not your house you're building, not the your great novel or your great your great work of art. Nothing else can give you that real security. And how we struggle against it, just how the human struggles against this. It's the ultimate fate of every being, and how afraid we are to leave. We're afraid to leave a state of happiness. There's a whole lecture about the desire for unhappiness. We're afraid to leave a state of unhappiness for a state of happiness and security. We're afraid of it. Oh, goodness. Looking at the time, let's see. Well, let's start this and see how we go. So, so I have this exercise about finding the irrational fear and resistance. I don't know if we're gonna have time to do it. That's right there in you if you just look for it. You don't have to reach far for it. But we hold on to this fear like it'll save us. It's like, have you ever heard about how they trap monkeys? What they do is they fill a big barrel with bananas and they cut a hole in it just the size of a monkey's hand. So the monkey reaches in and grabs the banana. Because he's got a fist now, he can't pull his hand back out. And so the guy walks up and just grabs the monkey. And the monkey is, is so attached to this outcome that he loses his freedom because he's so attached to it. Can we have the next slide, Brent, the monkey banana slide? What holding on to a small, insignificant temporary gain, the monkey loses its freedom. Some of us become so familiar with our pain, our faults, our idealized self-image, that we come the thing we identify. We so identify with our idealized self-image that we lose ourselves. And by holding on to the banana, we lose our true freedom and ultimate birthright, which is what? Uniting with the whole, moving from isolation to union. So what's one of the bananas you're holding on to? Can you take it down, Brent? Just, tell you what, if you would, just close your eyes or relax your gaze, and I'm going to ask you a few questions for you to ponder, and then you could journal about it. The questions I'm going to ask you, I'll set it up and then I'll ask. What's the banana you're holding on to? What's one of the bananas you're holding on to? Pride, self-will, fear, laziness, anger, self-righteousness. I mean, you want to do this with a spirit of self-love, not self-chastisement, right? So what's one of the things that's up for you to work on, and what's your next step to work on it? So just take a few breaths, settle into yourself, and I'll ask those questions again. What's up for you to work on next in your life? What's the banana you've been holding on to? And what's your next small step in your great transition? Brandon, did you get that? Okay. So in a minute, I'm going to invite everybody to be in a breakout room. We're going to have like 3 or 4 people be in your room. You don't have to share. You don't even have to stay in the breakout room. If you feel uncomfortable, you want to return to the main room, you can. So it's going to be for about 8 minutes total. So you're going to manage the time. I would recommend the person with the longest hair go first and call on the other people, just so you don't spend any time figuring that out. And just anything you feel that you'd be willing to share in the spirit of union, in the spirit of vulnerability, in the spirit of your own personal development and supporting that of the others. And again, nobody has to. Anything that you would want to share about what you came up with? Okay, any questions? All right, Bryn, can you send people away? Julie up for a holiday message. As a way of kind of locking in tonight, if you could just take like 30 seconds and write down one or more things that you're taking from tonight, something you got out of your participation, from your intention to be here the way that you brought yourself here. If you could just take like 30 seconds to do that, and then I would love to hear from a couple people in terms of what you're taking away. Would someone like to share? Margaret.
Hi. So I was listening to this Buddhist speak a few weeks ago, and I have little notes all over my desk here. And she said something that I keep telling myself, and it meshed with what we did tonight. And her words were, when you're frustrated because you see someone else who's anxious or judging or any of those lower self qualities.
Mm-hmm.
She said she tells herself, just like me. And I have a little note here, and it says, just like me.
Mm-hmm.
So when, I'm judging someone or seeing their lower quality, I feel a unity when I remind myself that.
That's a beautiful gift. Thank for you just gave us. Thank you, Margaret. Someone else?
Patty has her hand up, or it looks like she's trying to.
It looks like Patty was.
There she
You want
is.
to share something, Patty?
I got so much out of this tonight. Thank you so much. Something that I starred in my notes here is that when you can accept your limitations, you have unlimited power.
Love that. Thank you. Beautiful. Pam, did you want to share something?
This came out of the small group thing, partly, and part of what you talked about is that we're all united in all aspects of ourselves, both our humanity and our spirituality.
Yeah, nice. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to close with one of my poems that I wrote in one of those, 10-minute things. I think it's better if you look at it while I read it, but I don't really know. But go ahead and put it up, Ren. Come as you are. How can I be more kind to myself? Can I relax looking outside for acceptance? Can I release self-judgment? Can I accept that mistakes are a part of life, even when I'm the one making them? Can I allow people to be upset with me without uniting with their dissatisfaction? Can I hold my many regrets lightly? Can I find a place in the world where an ordinary person is still part of the great whole? There is a part of me that wants to love, a part that needs to hate, a part that knows I can't accept the world on the world's terms until I accept myself without preconditions. So then, take it down, please, Bren. Thank you all for your beautiful participation tonight. It was really lovely. I loved being with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Julie with our holiday message. And you're all welcome to stay as long as you like and visit and chat and take yourself off mute. And, you know, I would love to meet some of the new people that have, this is your first time. I particularly would love to meet you. So I hope you stay on if you choose to do so. And of course, it's up to you. Take it away, Julie.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you for that beautiful lecture.
Oh, Peggy has her hand up. We always let Peggy speak. She's Peggy.
I just want to thank everyone. I apologize. I tried to unmute and I raised my hand. I pressed the wrong button.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, dear.
Love and thanks. Thank you,
Okay.
Billy. Thank you, Judy, and everybody, and my lovely small group.
Thank you, dear.
Thank
All right, Julie.
I want to go hang out with Peggy.
Oh.
It is so great tonight to see so many faces that I know and so many that I don't know and haven't met and look forward to seeing again. I was just sitting here wondering and listening to Billy's lecture and how united we are in a lot of ways. And I was just wondering, you know, if any of you were like me, been experiencing periods of darkness and fear, and isolation and hopeless and helpless. Because if that's the case, if you're like me, I'd like to share with you a small teaspoon of two of my all-time favorite Pathwork lectures, especially at this time of year and at this time of renewal and hope the season always brings. Someone asked me once, what is my religion? Well, I could go into a lot of detail, but it's just easiest to say all the paths that lead me to the light. So, and you'll notice in a lot of the lectures, the guide talks about God, and I'm just inviting all of you to choose a term. Some people I know use higher self or life, spirit, divine intelligence, but I just want you to use whatever feels right for you to be able to really listen to and absorb the teachings. In lecture 35, Turning to God, it says, since all thoughts, and I think somebody touched on this a little earlier, since all thoughts, endeavors, and feelings create spiritual forms, such a group striving sincerely to get nearer to God is building a veritable temple. The building of this temple continues by all who contribute not only through the tasks you fulfill, but also through every effort, just the mere effort of making toward your own purification process, either by clearing your negativities through deep personal work, meditation, and prayer. The lecture says, imagine that every life-giving gift to another or ourselves places another stone in the creation of that divine temple. You will come to feel in your heart and soul the reality of the temple you are helping to build. And this contributes to the global energetic temple. The guide further says, the overcoming of a single fault, the full recognition of a single shortcoming, contributes more to the building of your sacred temple and plan of salvation than a large crowd at these sessions. And that's what we've been learning tonight from Billy, how each of us lifting up our darkness brings more light to us all. We offered this next quote last December, and it certainly bears repeating. In lecture number 219, the Christmas message, message to the children. The guide states, and like you could look at Bren's Christmas tree if you want, perhaps you can see the tree that you light is a symbol. Many, many candles have to be lit and be aflame within you to bring the total consciousness to its eternal glow on the outer level of your manifest existence. This next quote is the most important. Bren, do you have the next slide? Each recognition, each insight, each honest admission, each shedding of a partial mask, each breaking through a defense, each step of courage and honesty where you take responsibility for your negativity is a lighting of yet another candle. You bring light into your soul by bringing truth into your darkness. Thank you, Bren. Let us, with our courageous self-facing, illuminate our sacred temples and brilliantly shine our divine light. The more candles that are lit, the greater the joyousness and glory become. The light you shine by facing your darkness not only helps you move from isolation to union, it helps all of us in that great transition. In closing, I wish you all a very brilliant and illuminating season, celebrating the divine consciousness that lives deep within us all. Amen. So keep shining. The world needs your light.
Beautiful, Jules.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Now I want to invite everyone who would like to stay on for some fun social time. Hey, Pam, where are you? Take it away.
Okay, everybody. This is the part you've been waiting for. We're going to make awards for everyone that came in their holiday gear or background. And we have some great prizes.